Hey everyone. Welcome to another night. We're going through our leadership study with the 5 levels of leadership. So uh, you get me, Jaime Haskin, and Sally Baas here tonight, and we are going through the permission, level 2, permission. So we'll be talking about the ups and downs of that. So part 1 of this, so the first half of it. And we'll just kind of dive in here again, just as a reminder, kind of, if you want to take any notes, if you want to write down any questions as they come to mind, because the second half of this will open this up just to a little more dialogue, and you guys can ask some questions. So jumping right in here, he makes that shift from positional to permission. The biggest difference being that instead of people following you because they have to, they follow you because they want to. So how do you get someone to want to follow you? It's comes down to influence. If you've heard John Maxwell say this before, he'll say leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So it's building those relationships with people. And what stood out to me especially was, I think it all comes down to trust. If you have rapport and trust with people, that is what is absolutely necessary to be able to take them to the next level, to be able to grow yourself as a leader. And without that trust factor, you're not gonna be able to get there. And I'll go into the first point of upside here, and then pass it over Sal if you have some thoughts on this. But he goes into the upside right away, and he talks about it being more fun. And one thing that I want to mention, more enjoyable, right, is there's the shift that, well, he says there's a prevalent attitude that you have as a leader in this position is one of serving others and bringing out the best in people, which means you're thinking of others, you're focusing on others. And when we focus on ourselves, well, 2 things I want to mention. If we're have this prevalent attitude about serving others, like that is our purpose of this is why we're working, right? This is why leaders show up. This is why leaders show up when it's hard, when you don't feel like it, when you could be doing something else, when you're tired, whatever it is. That is why leaders show up, because you are at this level 2 leadership of putting others first, right? It's not just about you anymore and what you want and your goals. It's about having this prevalent attitude of serving others and bringing out the best in other people. And when you truly have that, then it doesn't matter if you're exhausted at the end of the day or you're stressed out, you're going to show up for them. You're going to show up for other people, right? And I think, and he mentions, back when he was more focused on himself. And I think what comes to mind too is when we focus on ourselves, it's easy to bow out. It's easy to have the excuses. It's easy to say, oh, well, I'll just do this, later. I'll show up next time, or it doesn't really matter. There's other people there. There's other leaders who will take care of it. So it's easy to bow out when the focus is on ourselves. So here is the big, big, big shift and putting others first. Sal?
Exactly. And when you do that, like Jaime was saying a little earlier, when you do focus on others and serve others in that way, guess what that builds? That builds trust. That builds influence. That builds people wanting to follow you, right? And so that is, I mean, it maybe feels hard sometimes to serve others, but it really is the mindset you have to have in this. Showing up no matter what and thinking about your team and their goals and what they need. So in that, like what he said in the beginning, leadership always means that people are going somewhere. And that sentence just struck me because they are going somewhere, right? We are going somewhere as a leader. They are going somewhere. And where do we want that to be, right? We can help set that somewhere or choose that somewhere where they are going. And in pouring into others and serving others, we can choose where that somewhere can be by helping them reach their goals, helping us reach our goals in turn. Um, so just thinking about it that way, I thought, oh yeah, that's interesting. And I think that thinking about leadership too, in the very first one, it is an opportunity that God has given us that's been put in our lap to serve other people. That is huge. We get to do this. We get to serve other people and help them and help them grow and see them succeed. And the one thing I highlighted was you have to like people. I don't know exactly where that was, but oh yeah, permissional leaders like people and want to help them. So if you don't really like people, you got to check yourself a little bit, because you got to like people to do this. It's not going to work if you don't have a heart and a, compassion and heart to serve them. So you got to like them, you got to want them to succeed, want to help them succeed, and serve in every capacity. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So then exactly. Yeah. And that's something that we can, and I'll probably mention this multiple times because I feel like it just keeps coming to mind, but as is with everything, it's a skill that can be developed, right? So if it's something that doesn't necessarily come natural, it can be developed. He goes on to say that leadership permission increases the energy level. And and I think when it comes down to relationships, for some people, it's going to come easier than others. For some people, it might be more draining than others. And I think the point of this is, though, is that it matters and it pays off. So it might take more effort to put time into some relationships. It might take more effort to go the extra mile and not just do a quick, how are ya? And like, move on, like, versus actually lean in and ask the questions and care. It takes extra effort, but it's absolutely worth it because of what you develop through that. And you develop that trust, and it's genuine. It has to be genuine, right? It can't just come flippantly. It can't just come because you're checking a box. It has to be genuine because people can tell that. And it takes intentionality. It takes doing it on purpose. And again, some people, it just might come so much more easily, maybe, or natural, I guess is maybe a better word, but it doesn't matter your personality. It doesn't matter if you're introvert or extrovert. You can do this on purpose. You can invest in other people on purpose. You can learn how to ask good questions. You can lean in, no matter your personality. And I think it can be easy. And this is coming from myself, who if I'm in a room full of people I don't know, it is not easy for me. It is very, very hard. It's intimidating. I don't feel in my element. I feel like I'm much better than I was, but I'm still not just like easy breezy, like can walk into a room and, make conversation. I have to do it on purpose. I have to do it even though I'm intimidated or afraid. So there's no personality here that, this is like, well, that's just who I am. I'm just not the person that goes and talks to people and initiates something first. If you find yourself saying that at all, then I challenge you, that's exactly probably what you need to start doing, and to do something out of your comfort zone, because you're not the only one, and it's not your identity. It's a skill set, and it's part of leadership.
Yes, absolutely agree with that. So moving on to 3, the leadership permission opens up channels of communication. And when I read this, so good, but I thought of my relationship with my husband, and how through almost 27 years now of being married, we have learned to communicate with each other. And it's sometimes has taken years and years and years to figure that out. But the communication piece, what is really important to grasp here with any relationship that you're in, business, personal, whatever, is that you listen to your people, and then in turn they listen to you because you are listening to them. Communication isn't just one-sided. It is speaking what you have, but it also is listening to what your team or whatever have to say too. So it's, I hear what you say, I see what you say, I feel what you say, right? He talked about that. And how in that it creates a really strong environment of open communication and a spirit of community, he says, so people are just can openly, freely communicate with each other. And that is really important as a team, I think, to be focusing on raising up leaders is establishing that right from the get-go, open communication. Even if you have a product user coming in, you guys, and you have to talk to them, you know, and say they're a future business builder on your team. Maybe you don't know it yet, or they're just they're, you know, using the products right now. But the second you are opening those communication lines with them, you are establishing that for your relationship, and how good that will be further on down the road if when they do decide to do the business with you, understanding how important that communication is and open communication. So even before you onboard or before they're signing up or whatever, listen, I'm gonna, you know, we need to chat a lot about what you're going through, and it's really important to communicate with me. So establishing that right away. And then of course with your team, it builds community, it builds trust, that open communication, feeling like they can say something, and you know, it will be heard.
Absolutely. That's really good examples. He mentions in this part too, talking about vision, right? And communicating vision. So if we have to develop a vision, we have to be able to articulate it, to be able to listen, like Sally was saying, not just tell them it, but get feedback, listen, right? And then I love this, relentlessly drive implementation of that vision to a successful conclusion. So relentlessly, when you have a vision, this isn't something that you give up on, or, oh, this month didn't go exactly how I wanted it to, or this is hard, or, you know, comparison, all the things that can rob that of us. The vision, you have that vision and you pursue it relentlessly, and you bring others with you, right? So when it comes to communication on this, though, we also have to be able to read people, right? So if you're training someone, teaching someone how to do something in this business, if you're articulating this vision, but you're maybe not getting a lot of feedback back from that person, maybe they're a little standoffish, or maybe they get more quiet, or they're not following through. We have to, you know, be able to communicate in a way where we lean in and ask questions, right? So we can't bulldoze people over. We can't keep, you know, going thinking that they're with us, but then not, you know, they're actually not. So if you are sensing something or someone isn't communicating well back with you, then sometimes we have to kind of step back and reach out to them where they are at and connect with them, instead of just thinking, okay, well, I told them this and now we're off to the races and they're going to be doing everything that I say or whatever. We have to have an open line of communication and listen and be able to read people, right? And to see in terms of how they're reacting, if they're following with us on things. Ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. That brings up that dialogue, even if it's something that you know, sometimes I think we can pull back or think, oh, well, I'm not sure where they're at, so I'm just going to keep bringing in more things because I don't want to have like a hard discussion, or I don't want them to say something that's uncomfortable or I don't know how to respond to. So just lean in and have those conversations, because that is ultimately how you build that trust, how you connect with others, how you relate to others, and how you can then encourage them to move forward, take that next step, address that fear, whatever it is.
And if you're following a leader, you guys, and they run away from a problem or don't face the problem, or they jump in headfirst to the problem and help you problem solve, what kind of leader do you want, right? What kind of person are you going to follow? One that kind of runs away from a problem, or one that stays and faces it and helps you through it? That is showing up as a leader too. And that's the kind of leader I want to follow, right? Somebody that's going to help me figure this out. Leader and leadership involves and includes figuring out problems with people and problem solving and helping, not running the opposite direction. And sometimes that can be scary too, because we might not know how to face that, right? But we can work through that too. That's a skill to learn too. So you want to hop into number 4 quick?
Yep.
So we kind of talked about this already, but you have to value the people around you. You know, they have to know that they're valued. They're more than just a number, that they mean something to you. So what does that look like? So, you know, maybe you know your business builders and your team members. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're just getting to know them and they're new. Like I have people in my cold market now that I'm getting into my network, and so I don't know them, right? So I have to make an intentional effort to get to know them and value them and who they are as people. What is their family like? What you know, do they struggle with? What do they do maybe for a job? Just all sorts of personal stuff. Really, you have to get to know them, and understand that each person is so unique and different in your organization, and who you kind of come into contact with is going to be different. So valuing each person is important, but it might look different for different people in different ways. So figuring, like, working through that and what that looks like. And you have to let them know that they matter, that they're more than just a number to you, that you really truly are concerned and care about their well-being, their future, their success with this business. You're here to serve them and value them.
You have to see people, right? So, and it goes back to in here with the Nelson Mandela example, it goes back to what Sal said earlier in terms of like leaning in for the hard things as a leader. Like you don't run from hard things. You actually take the front line when it comes to hard things. So that means you get in the dirt with people. You are there when it's hard and you help them through that. You take that front line. And when there's amazing things happening, you kind of step back and you celebrate other people. You lift other people up. So we can't rise by ourselves, and we don't rise like shining in the spotlight. We rise by lifting others. Number 5 is leadership permission nurtures trust. So back to that word, which I think is absolutely vital. And he talks about having integrity with people, and that is how we develop that trust. And I even just wrote the question in my book, like, what does having integrity with people look like? How does it look like to have integrity? I think it's following through on what you say you're going to do. I think it's being there for people. I think it's being present. A lot of things that we mentioned already. Leaning in with people. I mean, you build that over time too. It's not something that's just an overnight thing. And that's where the factor of like it being worth it at the end of the day, with leaning in and giving time to this, and it's not always being easy or comfortable. It's worth it because you build that integrity, that trust. You show integrity through that. You build that trust, and it does take time. It's not an overnight process. And I think people, he mentions here too, when the crunch comes, people cling to those they know they can trust, and those who are, not those who are just detached or not involved. So your people are watching you. They, people, whether it's people in your, sphere of influence, your community, whether it's your actual team members, people are watching you. So be the person that someone would want to link arms with when the going gets tough, and even when things are not tough, or when it's whatever area of life, people are watching. How are you showing up? How are you leading when it's fun? How are you leading when it's hard? How are you leading when it's quiet? You shouldn't change, right? We should always be steady as a leader. Our leadership and who we are doesn't change with what's going on around us. Circumstances change, environmental things change. It's not to say things aren't hard. It's not to say things around us isn't, like, real life doesn't happen, but who we are, our integrity and the trust and the rapport we've built, who we are as a leader, does not change in all those circumstances.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always think about who in my life do I really, really trust? Like without a shadow of a doubt, it has a lot of integrity and I really have respect for and trust. And what qualities do they have that make me trust them and have that respect for them? And then I try to look at myself. Do I have those qualities? Do I have what it takes for people to trust me, to have integrity, to respect me? So in thinking about, who you really admire in that, and then turning it in, on yourself and looking, do you have those qualities that, people on your team will respect and trust you too? It says, trust is required for people to feel safe. And that is a big thing in teamwork, right? Do they feel safe where they can share a question, where they can, be vulnerable or whatever? And he basically says, without trust, leadership is weak and teamwork is impossible. So you got to have that. It's very important. So,
Yep. All right, downside of permission goes into a few points here. So permission leadership appears too soft for some people. And I think that's going to be sometimes a little bit of a personality thing too. You got the people who are, just maybe red on fire, whatever it is, and you got the people who like to lean in. There's good things for both, but at the end of the day, you need both still, right? And he mentions he was kind of stuck in that for a little bit because he became more of a people pleaser. And I think if we can lean too much on that side and we're just that people pleaser person and want to make everyone happy, then we don't lean into, like I was saying earlier, with some of the hard conversations I hate even using the word hard conversations because at the end of the day, they are so valuable and usually very, very good. It grows you as a leader. It helps them through those hard times because if we aren't willing to lean in to ask some questions or confront some things, then really we're not helping our people in our best way and helping them grow, and we're not growing. So even though I use that phrase, it's at the end of the day, it is the best thing that you can do. And it's the best way I have learned and grown as a leader in terms of leaning into the questions, in terms of if I don't know something and I'm worried about something holding someone back, I am voicing that. I'm telling them, I'm asking them the questions. I'm saying, like, you look like you've pulled back a little bit, or you look like you're struggling in this area, or you said you were going to do this, but you still seem like you're not following through on that. Tell me more. Why is that? So you can be soft in some ways, but you can also say things in love that is going to help people move forward and also be action oriented and help both of you grow. So at the end of the day, he says you need both.
yep, I totally agree. I don't have much to add to that. The only thing I could add to that, I guess, is he said you can't become successful in leadership until you learn both. And when I read that, I'm like, gosh, do I do that? And that can feel a little intimidating and hard. Like, how do I learn to do both? And so I just want to encourage you guys that it comes with time and practice and experiences and all of that, right? You're not going to know exactly how to do this right away and how to balance both perfectly. It comes with time and just like leaning in and doing it. And you might make a mistake and you might mess up, but that's how you learn. Like Jamie said, we learn from that. It's feedback. It's not failure, right? And so don't be like intimidated or scared or feel like you have to know that going, you'll learn it as you go. So number two, leading by permission can be frustrating for achievers. The most common reason for leaders not moving up to level 3 is that they become so relational, they lose sight of the primary goal of leadership, which is helping others work together, move forward, and achieve. So that can be frustrating. Again, I've been there. And, at the end of the day, like I said, you learn as you go, you figure it out by trial and error. But I think that keeping that in the forefront and in front of you, it's okay if you're frustrated, but how do you work through that? How do you figure out that frustration? How do you, work through that together? So that I think is healthy, doing it that way.
Mm-hmm. I had thought I was gonna say, now I can't remember what I was gonna say. Because it was from something you said.
Shoot.
Um, what was it that you said? Um,
Uh,
sorry, go ahead, Sal.
well, I was reading the common reason for leaders not moving up is they become too relational. They lose sight of the primary goal of leadership, helping others work together, moving forward and achieving. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that didn't trigger anything.
Well, I guess not. I don't even know where my brain just went. Oh boy. All
Okay.
right. So nope, that's all good. We can stick there. I'm like thinking it's gonna pop in my head, but yeah. Oh, what was I gonna say? Oh, I was gonna say you need, okay, that's what it was. You need both. And then so I think a big part of that just comes to mind is in terms of we can get caught up sometimes in relationship building, maybe even with our own team. And, if we're getting on calls and talking and we talk about life so much and connect so much, or talk about other things that are not going to help us move forward in this business, it's a hard balance sometimes, right? Because we do develop friendships, we are there to connect, and we want to have all of those conversations and ideally could talk forever about whatever, but that's just not practical, especially when people are busy and have other things going on and you have to prioritize time. So it is a balance of connecting with people, having those conversations because they matter, but also being able to move a conversation forward and help someone use that time for the best for them and yourself in terms of helping them move forward in their business. So sometimes that is taking control of a conversation maybe and helping them move forward in terms of what is necessary to talk about for maybe that month to help them grow, to address maybe concerns or what's going well, but what is a struggle right now? What are some action steps they can do to work through that struggle? What are their goals and what are their action steps to help them reach that goal? So we have to be able to pivot and shift from that connecting piece to guarding our time with helping someone move forward, because you're not only doing that for yourself, you're doing that for them because they are here, they're showing up, they're putting the work in because they want to hit goals. So sometimes we need to help refocus people or redirect people. And that can be a balance sometimes. All right, permissional leaders can be taken advantage of. So I guess that kind of goes into boundaries, right? I was kind of what I was just talking about too, with making sure you have to have those boundaries with people. And then he talks about the different types of people that you'll be, kind of work with, the people who are kind of those takers, people who, the developers, the acquaintances, the friends. So you'll have different people who utilize that time with you in different ways. I guess I just jumped forward. I didn't even mean to. And it kind of all connects there in terms of how we're able to connect, but also set boundaries. When we set boundaries and we put a bar for someone, then they will in turn respect those boundaries if you respect your own boundaries. I'll say that.
Yep. I agree. Nothing to add. I'll move on to number 4. Permission leadership requires openness to be effective. And that quote, you can impress people from a distance, but you must get close to influence them. That is so true. So you have to be real and you have to be open to when you make mistakes and admitting your mistakes and your flaws. Because thinking again of a leader that I want to follow somebody who's real and who I know makes mistakes and admits them. Because somebody who never makes a mistake or makes a mistake and doesn't admit it is not someone that I could trust or that's going to have an impact in my life or that I will respect, right? And so you guys going through this, yes, we will make mistakes. We will screw up. We will, struggle here and there. And honestly, sometimes I think our pride keeps us as a leader from admitting those to our team. Like, I can't tell them that. I can't say I did that because then they won't trust me or respect me, which exactly is the opposite. I think in admitting and showing up in your failures and your hardships is a bigger reason for people to respect and follow because you're real. You're genuine. You're telling the truth. Truth always wins. Truth always has influence and gains respect and followers in so many ways. So don't be afraid to admit your mistakes. It really, truly will build your team stronger in the long run.
All right, level 2 leadership is difficult for people who are not naturally likable. So this goes back to kind of that whole, well, I'm just not that way, or I'm not as likable, or I don't, have a lot of friends or whatever. And I think, I mean, he puts the mirror up in this one. He's like, well, do you like people? And that's oftentimes maybe the problem, right? So I think it's good to reflect on, how do you feel like you're coming across to other people? Sometimes someone being quiet and shy and reserved can come across as the opposite. Maybe you don't even, maybe you're just quiet, but people think you're stuck up. Or, I mean, I say that because I know, because of from experience, sometimes if you're quiet and you keep to yourself, people just might think that you're not interested, or you're not nice, or whatever. So, are you a likable person? How should you show up? And do you like other people? And he tells you right here examples of what to do, in order to be intentional, to make a choice to like other people, to get to know other people. It is a choice. And we cannot just cough that up to excuses, or just, that's who I am.
Yeah. Yep. It is a choice for sure. Okay, so the last one, number 6. So this one is so good. And with whole people, with dealing with whole people, you guys, it's going to be messy. He says that right up from the get-go. When you're dealing with that, there's going to be messy and difficult situations because people have stuff, and we're sinners and it's hard. And um good leaders are able to look at hard truths, see people's flaws, face reality, and do it in a spirit of grace and truth, which I always love to remember, when I'm having a hard time offering grace to people, which sometimes I really struggle with. I remember that Jesus offers grace to me every day, where I screw up every single day. And so I'm getting grace. I need to be able to pay that forward too. And they don't avoid problems, they solve them. I was speaking about this a little earlier. As a leader in a leadership role with a big team under you, you have got to face the problem head on. You cannot run in the opposite direction. You have to show them confidently, show up. We're here and doing this together. I'm going to help you. That is huge. That will really build trust and respect. And understanding that conflict is part of the problem. I wish Val was on tonight, because when we started this, and Jamie knows I was going to say, when we started doing this, us girls, a whole bunch of girls in a chat together with, strong wills and opinions, and we were still figuring all of this out. We had some little conflicts and some tiffs and, stuff like that, nothing major, but just stuff that we had to work out. It's just going to come in a business like this. And that's okay. So knowing as a leader that that's going to show up, but being able to resolve conflict and talk that through maturely, which some of us had to learn. I've grown so much, you guys. Oh my gosh. But it just it's constructive. And so I circled that last little part, it frees you to lead with a positive attitude and an open mind. Okay. You know that as long as people have a pulse, you're dealing with messy and difficult situations. So just being aware of that and just being open to doing that, not running away, not being scared of it, just facing it with maturity and emotional maturity and all of that. And sometimes when conflicts arise or whatever, our emotions quickly take over and we act on our emotions first. And that's what I did and sometimes still do and still learning, but we shouldn't do that. We need to take a deep breath and, this is all figure outable. I always say that now to my kids too. This is figure outable. Take a deep breath. It's okay. We can get this. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Jane.
That's really good. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to know what's coming. And when it comes to generally family, you're gonna figure it out and you're gonna work through it and you're gonna forgive each other, right? So we have to kind of know and have that mature mindset that in business and relationships, it's the same thing. We can take the high road as leaders. You don't have to have the last word. You don't have to always be the person that's right. You don't always have to say even your point of view if it's not constructive anymore. Sometimes we have to let things go. Sometimes you have to wait 24 hours before responding because
Mhm.
it would not be wise to respond right away. I need to get a perspective shift. So if we can be mature and have mature conversations, and sometimes check check ourselves in terms of, not basing everything off of our feelings, but off of truth and giving people the benefit of the doubt. And we can go so much further, right? So leadership is going to have those kind of moments. Leadership is going to have conflict situations. So how are you going to show up in those moments? How would you want someone else to show up in a leadership position if you were in that, kind of spot? Like Sal's mentioned that a couple times. So be that person that is going to lead well, be it hard or good times. And I just want to encourage you guys to reflect on where you're at level 2. Now that you've been through the first half of it, we're going to finish the second half next time. We're going into questions right now, but reflect on where you're at. What do you do well? What are some areas of growth? Is there anything missing? So be aware as we work through this book on, on where we're at in terms of you personally are at in terms of growth as well. So any questions that you guys have had? You can ask.
So I was curious, what do you guys do to keep that balance kind of between the friendship and then someone's leader? And I'm thinking in terms of like when some of my builders like have something going on, like all of their kids are sick at once. And I have a lot of kids, so like I get that that's hard. And then there's the part of me that wants to like empathize and comfort them or like tell them a, earache remedy or whatever. But then there's the part of me that's like, you still have to do your work. But I'm not saying that like that, of course. But I also want to be like, remember, you still, still want to do your IPA. And I feel like sometimes, like, especially when my builders will message me like privately out of their chats and they're like dumping all this crazy stuff, like, and again, I want to empathize and support them. And I really do care. But then I struggle with that part of me that's like, I should still push you towards your goal, but I don't know how to do that. I think sometimes without thinking to myself, like, what if they feel like I'm not being empathetic with their situation or, so how do you guys balance that?
Go ahead, Jane.
Well, I think you can definitely, well, and you don't want to read the situation for how much to do the other, but you can definitely do both. I think it's definitely good to always empathize first and connect as a friend and be there for someone, no matter what, right? So you have to be able to connect with them and acknowledge what they're going through. Otherwise, they're gonna feel not heard and like it doesn't like you don't care or whatever. So it's important to connect with them and empathize with where they're at. Depending on how severe it is, I might leave it at that for a day. Or if it's like a consistent thing where it kind of seems to pop up a lot, where there's always kind of a calamity of things happening and it's kind of a consistent thing, then, one thing you could do is connect again. Oh, that sounds really hard. What's going good today? What's something you're grateful for today? That might be some way just to kind of help shift their perspective if they are going for big goals and you know that, and they're telling you because they don't know how to manage and get it all done. Then again, connect, acknowledge what's going on, and then what are your thoughts? How are you going to, you know, get through today and kind of maybe fit something in, or what time do you think you do have, and I can help you figure out what we want to prioritize during that time, or, you know, kind of just lean in and ask the questions. So it depends on where they're coming from, what they're dealing with per se. And I'm assuming they're coming to you because they probably still want to move forward with, you know, some goals and they're struggling to get it in. So maybe just some advice and tips. But before you jump into, make sure you do this, and here's how you can do this. If you can ask questions first and help them, connect with them that way, it's less of you telling them what to do and more so, hey, let's figure this out together, and it's a little less, maybe people don't put up their walls quite as much then.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing as far as if it's like 1 or 2 days, because kids can be sick for a little while and that can be really hard, or other things come up and happen, and it's 1 or 2 day thing, but they're right back at it again, encouraging that. But if it's an ongoing thing that keeps happening, I feel like there's a root to that. And why? Like, why are they stopping and starting a little bit? Why aren't they consistent? What is the reason? They're making excuses, because that's basically what it is an excuse. Is it lack of belief? Is it, maybe they need some more vision casted to them? Do they really believe they can do this and that this is the answer for them? Kind of backing up a little bit to that sort of thing could maybe potentially help too, talking them through that. But I love the idea of Jamie said, always connecting first and bringing up the issue or the family thing or whatever the crisis is, but then always going into the conversation of work. And so what did you do today to move your business forward? Something like that. What can I help you with in your chats? Whatever, just something to get the conversation going about the business again.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that because I don't have a problem with like the empathizing or offering like tips for the situation or whatever. But I do feel like I have struggled for like, how do I move it back towards the business? And so I really, really liked that like idea of saying like, well, what did you do to move your business forward? Or I wrote down a question that I thought of while you guys were both talking, and because when you said if it's like a reoccurring thing, and for some of my builders it's like the sky is falling every week, and so I was thinking as you guys were talking, like I said, and I wrote down, what do you think makes it hard for you to prioritize time for your business when blank is happening? So kind of like putting it back on them, but I'm also saying like, hey, I'm noticing you're not doing this. Like, why do you think that's hard for you? Because I think that's been, like I said, a struggle is how do I still be empathetic, still connect, still obviously care, but then the leader part of me needs to still be like, hey, you're doing a big thing over here. Like, don't forget that. So yeah, that definitely helps because now I feel like I have a plan for that. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
That's a good question that you wrote down. Yep. And sometimes it's also just giving them belief that, it's normal to have hard days, and, you're not the only one. Like, I get it. That is tough. Here's something that's helped me, or, like just being able to normalize that, and that you can be successful even when things are hard is sometimes helpful too.
Yeah.
I'd like to add to that. One thing I think is mindful is to realize that this business is not easy. A lot of times there's a learning curve for people depending on what their backgrounds are. So when you have life struggles that come in and then you're already not sure on how to do the other stuff and you're trying to learn that stuff, you can be overwhelmed. And so I would say, one thing you can do is think, and I've read this in one of the books, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. And so sometimes it's just bringing the focus back around that, take the overwhelm away from them, and just say, what can we do today? What's the one thing we could do today? Instead of doing 10 things today or 3 things today, what's one thing we could do today? Could we, connect with 3 people? Or maybe could we just do one post? What is one thing that would be one bite? Because even though it's overwhelming, and even though ultimately we'd like to do more steps, on a regular basis, but maybe there's only one step they can do that day because life is just going crazy. And then once things start getting comfortable with them, then doing 3 steps at one time is not hard. Does that make any sense? But I know for myself, when I'm trying to learn how to do things, and then I have challenging times in my life, sometimes I just need somebody to focus me and say, okay, Lisa, wait a minute. Let's forget about the 3 steps. Let's just focus on this one step. Can we do just this step today? And then maybe tomorrow we could do 2 steps, or maybe we have to do a different step, but it's building slowly, because if we can start building it slowly with that person, then they're going to catch on. And then when it's a struggle, it's not going to be that big of a deal because it's not overwhelming anymore, because they have ground underneath them. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes when extra stuff in life is going on, we need to, we can't go full force all the time. We're all human. So if we need to scale back a little bit and do some bare minimums and then move forward, but yep, just kind of honing in at that one thing at a time, one step at a time, 1 hour at a time of a day sometimes, or sometimes we can't even look at our whole day. And sometimes we just have to look at the next thing we have to do in that day. So, yeah. Any other questions?
So I had a question regarding what you guys' thoughts are. The first point under the downside of permission, appearing too soft for some people. So he goes into people pleasing, and I am a recovering people pleaser. I say that because I'm not where I used to be, but I'm not where I want to be yet. But I had several years ago, I had a position where I was in charge of about 25 women I was the director of a daycare. And that's where I really learned and realized and had an epiphany that I was a people pleaser, because people pleasers make really sucky leaders most of the time because we don't know how to say no. And so now coming into this Plexus business and wanting to share it, I'm realizing how much that is holding me back because I just want to make people happy. And a lot of times we can't do that, as leaders. So have either of you struggled with that, or do you have any advice for someone to come out of that area, if that makes sense?
What is the hardest thing? I'm going to turn this around and ask a question first. What is the hardest thing for you in terms of the people pleasing and in that? Like what makes that hard for you?
I think probably valuing too much what people think. Like it's holding me back in reach outs, like new reach outs specifically. Like, well, if I reach out to them, they're going to judge me or think that I'm, thus and so, and I can't take that rejection. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I just want, everybody to be happy. And sometimes also with, VIPs that I've had that have quit, like I feel like I've done a good job to be there to, walk them through it and everything. But like when they're ghosting me, I'm like, why are they doing this? Like maybe it's me, and I always immediately come back on me. And so sometimes I have a hard time, just like you were saying, leaning in and pushing or, gently pushing.
Yeah. So that's really good. And I can totally relate. And the thing that's helped me the most is realizing that in that moment, it's kind of the opposite of what was actually thinking and feeling. So like what you described, in reality, I'm more worried about myself than about them. Even though it feels the opposite. It feels that I'm worried about them. I want to be a people pleaser. I want them to be happy. But if my main concern is what they think of me, and I'm focused on myself instead of how I can serve them and what could I offer them. And if I can turn that around and have that focus on them, then it helps me make better decisions when it comes to people pleasing. So for reach outs, I know that the majority of people are either going to be, either they're struggling with a health thing or could use Plexus preventatively. 100%. Either way, everyone could benefit from it. I also know that majority of people could really, really use some extra money, whether it's a lot of extra money, a little bit of spending money, whatever. So I know I have something to offer. So if I don't offer it, then I am more focused on myself because of whatever insecurities that I have, instead of focusing on them and giving them at least the option and not stealing that away from them, if you will, right? And then the same thing, and when it comes to even some of those harder conversations, be it someone who says that they're going to quit and they're like, yeah, this just isn't for me, it didn't work. I could think, oh, I want them just to be happy, I'm going to like let that be. But really that's my insecurities, because I'm worried about they'll think I'm pushy or I'm, thinking of myself. But if I really am thinking of them, I know that they maybe weren't consistent. I know that these products work. I know that they had goals for why they started and they really wanted to reach these goals. And if I truly believe that this could help them, then I want to lean in and at least ask some questions. I'm going to honor and respect whatever they decide, but I'm at least going to lean in and say, oh, tell me more. Like, did something happen? Tell me more. Like, did the product, what do you mean the products didn't work? Tell me, all you have to do is say, tell me more, and just lean in. And maybe they weren't consistent. Maybe they had some bad detox, which then we know their bodies needed this, right? They was going through some healing. Oh, let me tell you more about what I learned about detox, and give them some information. So it's not being like telling them what to do. It's just leaning in and asking questions. And even if someone is struggling with something with a business and you're leading them, then they're not doing something. We know they're here and they want to do this business because they want to hit a goal. They want to hit a rank. They want to earn some money. And if I know something that could be holding them back, I know that they're not following through on something they said that they would do, then I know they probably are not going to reach the goals that they want to reach. And then am I really leading them well if I'm just a cheerleader and saying good job, but I know they're really not doing what they need to do, and therefore they're not going to get to where they want to get, and then they're just going to be frustrated. So I want to do what's best by them to help them get the results that they want. And sometimes that's just asking, again, some more questions. If I knew something that was holding you back, would you want me to tell you? Get their permission. They say, oh yes, please tell me. Okay, this is what I see. You're doing so good with this. Tell them what they're doing good at, but here is something that I see you maybe avoiding. Can you tell me why you're avoiding that? Or here's something that we talked about before, but I'm not sure that you're following through on that yet. Tell me more. What's going on? Is this hard for you? Get more answers for them. What is holding them back? Is it a fear? Is it they just don't know how to be consistent on something? You can then help them with belief, with normalizing something, with giving them tips on consistency, but you have to lean in and ask those questions, or you never know what's going on, and therefore you can't even help them how you best need to help them. So it's really, really just about them.
That makes total sense. So basically what I'm hearing is I'm calling myself a people pleaser, but really I just need to get out of my own way and just stop and just focus on other people and take it off myself. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. I did a team call once. I can't remember exactly, but I remember part of it was basically saying, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's not, even though I'm having these feelings and these fears or whatever, it's not about me at all. And honestly, what John Maxwell says in this exact section, Lindsay, is that you are held captive by that. And when you let that go, and understand that you don't have the capability to please everybody. It will not happen. Everybody cannot be pleased, right? When you let that go, that is freedom, girl. That is lifting that captivity off and you are free. And that right there is going to help you build, with your belief, with your confidence, with, moving the needle forward on your business. Just understanding that you can't please everybody. And it doesn't matter if they don't agree with what you're doing or, I had to go through that when I started posting and sharing and reaching out. I had a lot of negative, just backlash and hard stuff. And I just had to free myself from worrying about what they thought and trying to please them because it's not possible. It will never happen. So it was so much freedom that came for me with just, just getting rid of that and not being held captive by that anymore. So I want to encourage you to not think about your feelings and when you're going through that, right? And how you feel, but putting the focus on them and how you can help them. Okay.
Absolutely. Great question. Thank you for asking that. Thank you guys for joining in tonight. And we're gonna call it because we only have a few minutes before team calls start. So probably not much more for another question, but we will see you on September 2. And just thank you for leaning in on this. Make sure you're inviting your people. If you've fallen behind it all, just catch up. This is very, very valuable. This is an incredible leadership book. So lean into it and reflect as you do so. And I know that I'm getting a lot from it too, going through it other times. The last time I did was many years ago. So Sal, anything you want to say to close?
Nope, that's it. I appreciate all of you guys hopping on too.
See you guys.
See ya.